This video was brought to you by manscaped.com, but more on that in just a moment. Let me ask you a question. Which country is China's best ally? The most important country at this point in time in regards to the geopolitics of the Asian giant? I'm sure you all know the answer. It's North Korea. And yes, you're right. North Korea is the only country that China has a military alliance with since 1961. In other words, if someone were to attack China, North Korea would have to come to its defense, and vice versa. But otherwise, Beijing has been distancing itself from Pyongyang for years. Let's be frank though, in reality, North Korea has nothing to offer China beyond headaches. But that is another story. The truth is that there's no objective measure of the level of friendship, but we can find some figures that help us to understand how well some countries get along with others. The arms trade. Think about it this way. Usually a state will only sell arms to a country it trusts. So the question is, who is the main importer of Chinese arms? Well, pay attention to this graph because the results will probably surprise you. So there you have it. At the top of the list is Pakistan. To give you an idea, 38% of all the weapons China sold between 2016 and 2020 went to this country. But we're not only talking about arms. China is the creditor of 30% of Pakistan's entire foreign debt. What's more, China is building both a trade corridor and a port in this country. These two pieces of infrastructure could be crucial for China's security, but that's something we're going to talk about later in today's video. Pakistan is one of the most unstable countries in all of Asia. As we've already seen here on VisualPolitik before, this country is on the verge of bankruptcy, and that's worrying when you consider they have atomic bombs, a trigger-happy nuclear doctrine, and over 40 terrorist groups. That's right, Pakistan is home to about 45 different terrorist groups. In other words, it's a hornet's nest. And at the same time, it's an increasingly important ally of China. Could we say that it's Beijing's best ally? Well, again, there's no objective measure of friendship, but it's certainly one of the most important allies, and at the same time, one of its most unstable. So the question is, why? To what extent are these relations a problem for the West, and could China end terrorism in Pakistan? Today we're going to answer all of these questions, but before we go any further, let me tell you about something special. Christmas came early this year because we just got gifted the new performance package by Manscaped. Let's take a look at it. This hygiene and shaving kit from Manscaped covers all your needs from head to toe. Literally. For starters, it includes the crown jewel, the Lawnmower 4.0, their best seller, a waterproof, cordless trimmer with its advanced skin-safe technology that helps reduce cuts and snags on the most sensitive areas of your body. It also comes with a handy LED light when shaving on dark, cold winter nights. This kit also includes the Weed Whacker, the nose and hair ear trimmer with 360-degree rotating blades. The moment you start using it, you'll realize you don't know how to live without it. But that's not all. You'll also find the Manscaped Crop Preserver, Intimate Deodorant, and the Crop Reviver Body Spray. It's exactly what it sounds like. Quick absorbing, clear liquid solutions for keeping those areas cool and clean all day long. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also receive, for a limited time, 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag and the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs. Don't wait any longer. Go to manscaped.com using the codes VPEN, you'll get 20% off, as well as free international shipping, plus 2 free gifts. And now, let's get back to the video.
Raise crows and they will gouge out your eyes.
Pakistan is one of the 7 stans, that is, the countries whose names ends in stan. But do you know where the rest of the name of the country comes from? Well, although it might not seem like it, it's actually an acronym. These names you see on screen are the main ethnic groups living in Pakistan. P for Punjabi, A for Afghan, K for Kashmiri, S for Sindhi, and TAN for Balochi. Stan. I know it's not a perfect acronym, but Pakisp sounds really bad. In any case, the name of Pakistan is very significant if we take into account its history. And this is when we have to go all the way back in time, even before the British arrived. You see, what we know today as Pakistan was once divided amongst various ethnic groups. In other words, there was no sense of belonging to a nation called Pakistan. This was a territory populated by different ethnic groups that had very little to do with each other. The largest group was the Punjabi, and there were far fewer Pashtuns, Sindhis, Sakiris, or Balok in the territory. Each group also spoke different languages, for example. The Punjabi spoke and still speak Urdu, which is also the official language of Pakistan. Suddenly, The British arrived and colonized all of what is now Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, a gigantic mosaic of different cultures and ethnicities. Later, these territories became independent in their own right. After several wars, we ended up with what we now know as Pakistan, an attempt to create a nation by shoehorning together different ethnicities. Pakistan has never resolved its ethnic and religious tensions. And I know what many of you are wondering, why does Pakistan get along so badly with India? Well, precisely because one of those religious and ethnic conflicts. In this case, we are talking about the Kashmir region. When British Empire arrived in the territory, it decided to give the power of Kashmir to a minority Hindu ethnic group, the Dogras. This group purged all the Muslims who were in power in Kashmir, and considering that 95% of the population was Muslim, you can kind of imagine that they were not very happy about this. However, the breaking point came with the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947. Pakistan claimed this territory, but the governor of the area decided to integrate into India instead. Since then, these two countries have been at loggerheads. But wait a minute, because this is just one of the many conflicts that Pakistan has. The tensions between the various ethnic groups that make up this country have never ended. And you might be wondering, is this a religious issue or a racial issue? Well, no. The main reason is actually the economy, or rather, the unequal distribution of resources. You see, in Pakistan, state resources are directed to the various provinces depending on the number of people living in each province. Of course, if we take into account that the province of Punjab has about 110 million people and that Pakistan has a total population of 220 million, then half of all the resources go to this one region. And if we add to this the fact that the Punjabis are the majority in parliament and that they will always try to favour the interests of their region and their ethnic group, we have the perfect cocktail for an ethnic conflict. For example, the Saraikis live in South Punjab and complain that no resources reach them. The Pashtuns, who are in this region, also complain that no resources are reaching them either. But, without a doubt, the most neglected state is Balochistan, in the south of the country. Balochistan is the largest region in the entire country, but only 5% of the population lives here. For this reason, it is also the region that receives the least amount of resources. The Punjabis living in this region took over a lot of land that had belonged to the Baloch. What's more, the capital of the country, Islamabad, they have intervened in regional politics with an iron fist. In 2000, a terrorist group was born, the Balochistan Liberation Army. Since then, it's normal to come across news items like this one.
Balochistan Liberation Army claims Karachi attack and first woman suicide bomber. The explosion ripped through a van inside the Karachi University in southern Pakistan. The BLA said the attack was carried out by a women suicide bomber.
Exactly. All of these ethnic conflicts have given rise to a huge catalogue of terrorist groups. But as if that wasn't enough, Pakistan's own military has supported many of these groups. And at this point, you're probably going, all right, come on, Grant, what interest can a country's army have in supporting terrorist groups? The answer lies in India, Pakistan's arch enemy. The Pakistani army has a very curious strategy for fighting India. A strategy with a very descriptive name, bleeding India with 1,000 cuts. This strategy consists of supporting insurgent groups inside India in order to destabilize it. Since then, we find dozens of terrorist groups with unpronounceable names operating in Kashmir. Names like Lashkar-e-Taiba, Hizb-ul-Mujahideen, and Jaish-e-Mohammed, among others. For example, Lashkar-e-Taiba is responsible for the largest terrorist attacks in India, including the 2008 Mumbai bombings that killed 170 people. And what's the problem with this strategy? Plain and simple, it breeds crows that will gouge your eyes out. Look at these figures. Funding terrorist groups is a double-edged sword. Pakistan is now a hornet's nest with dozens of armed groups and scores of victims. And we're not just talking about a security problem, it's also an economic problem. After all, who's going to set up a business in a country where at any moment a bomb could be planted in your shop? But we've already talked about Pakistan's economy in previous videos. Now we're going to talk about another very important player in the development of Pakistani terrorism. And you'll say, who? Well, none other than the United States? And what interest does Washington have in financing terrorist groups in Pakistan? Well, we're gonna find that out right now.
The legacy of John Rambo.
Those of you in your 30s and experiencing back pain will remember the Rambo movie saga, right? I'm sure many of you have seen Rambo 3. Well, between the explosions, this movie has a lot more geopolitics than you might think. In this movie, John Rambo, played by Sylvester Stallone, goes to train the Mujahideen warriors fighting against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, right next to Pakistan. This was the 1980s. In those years, the communists were the bad guys in every movie, and everyone who stood up against them was the heroes. And yes, that included the heroes of freedom who were defending their age-old traditions. Well, This film reflects an event that actually happened. During the Cold War, the very religious Pakistan aligned itself with the United States to fight the godless Soviet Union. That's how Washington became Pakistan's biggest arms supplier and a trainer of terrorists. In fact, to give you an idea, until 1965, Pakistan imported 70% of its arms from Uncle Sam. From then on, relations between these two countries took a turn for the worst. In 1965, Washington placed an embargo on arms sales to both India and Pakistan. And as soon as Pakistan began its nuclear program, the US had blocked more and more arms shipments. However, at the beginning of this century, it seemed that the friendship between these two countries was on the mend. After 9/11, the United States declared a war on terror. Osama bin Laden was the most wanted man in the world. And because they thought he was hiding in Afghanistan, the United States asked Pakistan for help. In return, they lifted trade sanctions, provided direct economic aid, and a long list of etc, etc, you get the idea. You might think that Pakistan came out on top, but the truth is that they never stopped complaining about US planes violating their airspace. Think about it, they were looking for bin Laden. However, what ended up breaking relations between these two countries was precisely the moment when bin Laden was found. If you recall, bin Laden was holed up in one of Pakistan's wealthiest cities, Abbottabad. Specifically, he was living in a villa, and he had been living there for years. How is it possible that the Pakistani army did not notice? Or maybe they had just turned a blind eye. As you can't imagine, after this, the United States has remained cool towards Pakistan. And with good reason, let's not fool ourselves. And the flow of arms to this country has been substantially reduced. So, do you think Pakistan was left with no one to buy weapons from? If life teaches us anything, it's that when one door closes, a window opens. In this case, the United States closed the door on Pakistan, but China opened a window of opportunity. And this is not surprise us at all. The story they share is almost a Hollywood movie. Check this out.
China to the rescue.
In April 2015, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Pakistan for the first time as head of state. His words before visiting the allied country, the Chinese giant's best friend, made it quite clear how China felt about Pakistan.
When I was young, I heard many touching stories about Pakistan and the friendship between our two countries. To name just a few, I heard about how the Pakistani people were striving to build their beautiful country, and how Pakistan opened an air corridor for China to reach the world, and supported China to regain its rightful seat in the United Nations. These stories have left a deep impression on me. I look forward to my upcoming state visit to Pakistan, Xi Jinping 2015.
Relations between the Chinese and what we now call Pakistanis date back to before the British colonial era in South Asia. But the real friendship between China and Pakistan did not begin until after both countries became independent. You see, Pakistan was one of the first countries to recognize China as a nation. In addition, it also accepted the demilitarization of its northern border with Xinjiang as proposed by China. And if that were not enough, China has supported Pakistan in its wars against India, an antagonist of both countries. Remember when we told you that in 1965 the United States cut off Pakistan's arms supply? Well, China rushed to fill the gap. And between 1965 and 1973, 60% of all arms imported by Pakistan were Chinese. And although today that 60% is no longer maintained, 40% of all the arms Pakistan imports still comes from the Asian giant. In addition, they import everything: VT-4 tanks, unmanned aerial vehicles, submarines, fighters, no half measures. And so their trade is not only in arms, but in everything. Pakistan is part of China's new Silk Road, and China has decided to reward its loyal ally with the crown jewel of this initiative. You see, in 2015, China and Pakistan created an economic corridor between the two countries. Taking advantage of Pakistan's privileged geographical location with a coastline on the Indian Ocean, bordering the Arab world, and particularly Iran, China sees a golden opportunity in Pakistan. In fact, this flagship project revolves around a coastal city, the city of Gwadar. We've already spoken about it before here on VisualPolitik, but its importance for China is worth going over again. Gwadar is located in the southern part of Pakistan, in the province of Balochistan. Its proximity to the Strait of Hormuz makes it a perfect place to build a port to receive all kinds of products, but especially oil. Remember that the oil China buys passes through Indian territorial waters. In the event of a conflict, India could cut off all this traffic, collapsing China in just a few months. The port, therefore, is the key piece around which other projects in the city resolve, such as the construction of a hospital, breakwaters, along with the next major step, the construction of an oil pipeline. An oil pipeline connecting Gwadar with China, which will have to run through the whole of Pakistan from north to south. But not so fast. Just where did we say that city was again? In Balochistan? In that troubled region where the Balochistan Liberation Army is located? The same group that killed 3 Chinese citizens in April of this year? Well, VisualPolitik viewers, China has not forgotten terrorism in the country. In fact, although several financial packages it sends to Pakistan are conditional on improving the economy, other projects are conditional on improving security. The lack of security has prevented Chinese projects in Pakistan from progressing as they should. The Chinese even went so far as to ask for the entire city of Gwadar to be walled off. And if we add to the security problem Pakistan's decrepit economy, on the verge of collapse, unable to pay its debts, we have a very high-risk scenario for China. It is clear that Pakistan finds its best lifeline in China, and that China sees Pakistan as one of its best friends, if not the best. For mutual recognition at the beginning to military and economic relations. That is why, despite Pakistan having the most hostile investment climate possible, China is betting so heavily on the country. And the question now is, do you think China will make terrorism in Pakistan go away? Will Pakistan manage to lift its game with China? Will this beautiful friendship between the two last? Or will the West succeed in seducing Pakistan? You can leave me your answers in the comments below. And as always, don't forget that here on VisualPolitik, we release new videos every week, so subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell button down there so you don't miss any of our updates. If you like this video, like it so we know. All the best, and I'll see you next time.